here we are on Friday, and I appreciate your watching the videos. I will have a section on the test based just on the videos. It won't be very difficult, but I kind of hope it'll let me know if you've watched them. I feel that you will get a better grasp of Macbeth if you go through this with me. On the other hand, I understand that it's probably tedious for you to do this, and I'm sorry about that. We'll try to zip through Act III very quickly, although it is a very important, very central act, and there's a lot of excitement in it. Again, I think often people don't like Shakespeare because they don't really understand what's being said. Good actors can make it comprehensible, and that's why I've tried to encourage you to watch the movies. I'm not determined that you watch them, but I do want you to watch the videos and read the play and have a good sense of this particular Shakespearean tragedy. I particularly admire it because there's so much of psychology and just human nature, even though Macbeth is a king, and this is about Scotland. Now, I'd like you to look at Act III, the very first part, where Banquo lets us know that he is well aware what Macbeth did to get the throne. And at the first line, "Thou hast it now, king, cawdor, glams all, as the weird sisters promised, and I feared thou played most foully for it. Yet it was said it should not stand in your posterity, And then he concludes by saying, "May they not be my oracles as well, and set me up in hope, but hush, no more." Now you'd have to wonder about Banquo. He seemed to be a good guy up to this point in the play, but clearly he is planning to benefit from Macbeth being king, and he's not going to make objections, even though he wanted to keep his honor in regard to the other king. I think I'm going to go turn off that other light because it looks like I have an upside down halo. Okay, there we go. Now, there's a sound, and Macbeth as king, Lady Macbeth as queen comes in, some of the lords, and Macbeth looks at Banquo and beams. "Here's our chief guest." And Lady Macbeth said, "We couldn't have a real feast without him." And Macbeth says, "I'm going to have a solemn supper and I want you to be there." And of course, Banquo says he'll be there. "Ride you this afternoon?" "Well, yes." "And how far?" "Well, just as much time as it'll take between now and supper." And Macbeth on line 32 says, "Fail not our feast, be sure to be there," even though he has made plans to have him executed or, murdered. And Macbeth says, "Well, we hear that Duncan's sons, one is in Ireland and one is in England, and they're telling people all kinds of lies about the fact that they killed their father. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Is Fleance going with you, your son?" He says yes. And Macbeth says, "Well, have a good ride." And then a nice way of saying, "We'll disperse now." He says, "Let every man be master of his time till 7 at night. To make society the sweeter welcome, we will keep ourselves till supper time alone." We'll enjoy each other more if we separate before supper. Then the servant says those men are there, and after line 50, again, Macbeth's psychology comes out here. He says, this is a soliloquy, he's by himself. "To be thus is nothing, to be king is nothing, but to be safely thus. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which should be feared. 'Tis much he dares, and in that dauntless temper of his mind he hath a wisdom that doth guide his valor to act in safety. There is none but he whose being I do fear." Well, once you get rid of Banquo, there are going to be other people he fears. And then he retells the story of their meeting with the witches. He said, "I remember now that he chided the sisters when they said I would be king. That wasn't true." And then insisted they speak to him. And they hailed him father to a line of kings. "Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown and put a barren scepter in my grip." In other words, I'm not going to have any dynasty. I'm not going to have a line of kings. thence to be wrenched with an unlineal hand, no son of mine succeeding. He said, well, if that's the case, I have defiled my mind. For them the gracious Duncan I have murdered, put rancors in the vessel of my peace only for them, and mine eternal jewel given to the common enemy of man to make them kings. It drives him crazy to think that he has murdered Duncan, has lost his eternal soul to win the throne. And for whom? For the sons of Banquo. And then there's a sound, who's there? And it's the servant bringing in the murderers. And Macbeth talks to them, and we realize that he has spoken to them earlier and convinced them that Banquo is the cause of all their grief. And he says, aren't you willing to avenge this? Line 102, we are men, my lord. And then there's kind of a horrible speech here where he says, well, yeah, as in the catalog you go for men. He said, like all kinds of critters are called dogs, although some are really talented and some are pretty terrible. And it's the same way with men. There are lots of different kinds in the catalog. Now, if you have a station in the file of men, not in the worst rank of manhood, say it, and I will put the business in your bosom whose execution takes your enemy off. Grapples you to the heart and love of us, I will reward you, who wear our health but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect. All I need to be happy is the death of Banquo. And the men stand up, and you have to admire them because they have been through great troubles, and they're the best kind of men to get to be assassins because, as the first murderer says, we have nothing to lose. And Macbeth tells them that I could easily have him killed, but I can't. 136, for certain friends that are mine and his, whose loves I may not drop but wail his fall, who I myself struck down. So I need your help because I can't just kill him, or his friends would rebel against me. And then Macbeth gives them the plot and tells them to make sure that Fleance is killed. It's interesting that Lady Macbeth made the last plot, but she has been pretty much sidelined now. Macbeth is making his own plans. And then at the end of that scene, it is concluded, Banquo, thy soul's flight, if I find heaven, must find it, Banquo, thy soul's flight, if it find heaven, must find it tonight. Lady Macbeth, is Banquo gone from court? Yes, he is. She asks the servant. Now remember, they seemed very united in the first act and so on, and the second act, but now she has to ask for permission to see him. Say to the king I would attend his leisure for a few words. And then a very insightful and famous speech of Lady Macbeth's, North's had all spent, where our desire is got without content. If we get what we wanted, but we're not happy, then there's nothing. To safer to be that which we destroy, than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. Both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are finding that it would almost be better to be the victim than the aggressor if you live in the kind of agony they're living in. And then the king comes in. She says, how now, my lord, why do you keep alone? Why are you so isolated? Of sorriest fancies your companions making, using those thoughts which should indeed have died with them they think on. Things without all remedy should be without regard. What's done is done. She knows that he's brooding over the murder of Duncan. She does not know that he's planning the murder of Banquo. Then another snake imagery. We have scorched the snake, not killed it. And as long as there's a snake around and he has children, it's dangerous. And he says, it's better to fix things up, line 20, than eat our meal in fear and sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. He's still having terrible dreams. Better be with the dead, whom we to gain our peace have sent to peace, than on the torture of the mind to lie in restless ecstasy. And then he says, I kind of envy Duncan. He sleeps well. Nothing can harm him. Lady Macbeth, line 30. Come on, gentle my lord, sleek o'er your rugged looks. Be bright and jovial among your Be bright and jovial among your guests tonight. So shall I love, and so I pray be you. And be especially nice to Banquo, really kind of flatter him. And he says, again, an advice he has given before, be flattering to him and make our faces visards to our hearts, disguising what they are. Put on a mask to disguise your heart. Now, Lady Macbeth's very simple line, you must leave this. I think she's beside herself. You've got to stop this. And a famous line of Macbeth's again, the snake image or biting insects, really. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. Thou knowest that Banquo and his fleance lives. And Lady Macbeth says, but they won't, live eternally. And he said, well, that's true, but they are assailable. And tonight, before the bat flies and the Queen of Witches does her thing, there are going to be serious deeds. At the end of that speech, before all this happens, has drowsy night's yawning peal, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note. Now, up until now, she has been his confidant, but she says, what's to be done? And he tells her, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. I don't think he has any kind of inkling that she is going through agonies of remorse. And he says, wait, it'll be a nice surprise. I'll keep it secret till you applaud the deed. I don't think she's really in for killing more people. And then he begs dark night to come with all its evil. And as he goes on, line 61, he looks at her and says, thou marvelest at my words, but hold thee still. Don't be concerned. Things bad begun make strong themselves by ill. If you begin things badly, you can do worse things, and that'll make them stronger. And then we have the murderer thing. I'm going to skip that. But Fleance does escape. And then scene 4, the banquet, Macbeth is being his jovial host personate, and he says, you know your own degrees, to first and last the hearty welcome. And Macbeth said, I'm going to schmooze, or what do we say? He's going to mingle. Ourself will mingle with society and play the humble host. Our hostess keeps her state, but in best time we will require her welcome. Lady Macbeth was probably at the head of the table and, sitting as the hostess. And she says a welcome too. Now, Macbeth notices the first murderer, and he goes over, before he sees him, he says to Lady Macbeth, the guests encounter you with your heart. Thanks, both sides are even. Here, I'll sit in the middle. He sits in the middle of the table, and then he approaches the murderer. There's blood on your face. Well, it's Banquo's. And then when he finds out that Fleance has fled, then on about line 22, then comes my fit again. I had else been perfect, whole as the marble, founded as the rock, as broad and general as the casing air. He fools himself that he would have been perfectly fine if these people had been killed. But now I'm cabined, cribbed, confined, bound in. And that line struck me about the coronavirus. But all that is for saucy doubts and fears. But Banquet's dead. And he said, yes, definitely dead. But line 31, thanks for that. There the grown serpent lies, but the worm that's fled, his son, Fleance, hath nature that in time will venom breed. No teeth for the present. And in his mind, he's probably thinking about how he can kill Fleance. The murderer exits. Well, he's been over talking to someone in the doorway. Lady Macbeth says, come back, you do not give the cheer. The feast is sold that is not often vouched while 'tis a making. You can go to a restaurant and buy food, but this is a feast. The people are welcome. 'Tis given with welcome. To feed were best at home. From thence the sauce to meat is ceremony. When you're having a party or a festival, it should be different from just having dinner at home. Well, at this moment, the ghost of Banquo hoves in and sits in Macbeth's place. Well, Macbeth goes to sit in his place, and Lennox says, "May it please your highness sit," and he gestures to the empty place, which is now occupied by Banquo. And but Macbeth is still thinking, well, he's putting on a good show. Oh, the only thing that's lacking here to make a perfect feast is Banquo. And Ross says, well, he's really bad-mannered not to come, to grace us with his presence. And he's still gesturing for Macbeth to sit near him. And Macbeth says, the table's full. No, Lennox says, here is a place reserved. Where? Here, my good lord. What is it that moves you? And Macbeth says, which of you have done this? All right, who's playing a joke, or who's... And he says to the ghost, thou canst not say I did it. Well, that's true. Well, no, it's not. He did kill him. Thou canst not say I did it. Never shake thy gory locks at me. Isn't that a great line? You know, gore is blood. Don't shake your gory locks at me. And Ross says, gentlemen, rise. His highness is not well. But Lady Macbeth is trying to, pull it out. And she says, oh, don't be concerned. He's often been like this. He has these momentary fits, and he'll be fine right away. And if you notice him, if he realizes that you're looking at him, it'll make him worse. Then she goes over to Macbeth and hisses, are you a man? Well, that echoes something earlier. And he says, yes, and a bold one that dare look on what might appall the devil. She's furious. Oh, proper stuff. This is the very painting of your fear. You keep having these stupid hallucinations. This is the air-drawn dagger which you said I led you to Duncan. Oh, these flaws and starts, impostors to true fears, would well become a woman's story at a winter's fire, authorized by her grandam. You're like old women sitting around a fire in the winter telling scary stories. Shame itself. Why do you make such faces? When all's done, you but look upon a stool. Now, there's nothing worse for a feast or a party than having the host kind of look as if he's having a fist and make all kinds of weird faces and keep pointing at a stool and talking to it. And Macbeth says, look there, don't you see? But then the ghost just oozes on out. And Macbeth keeps talking, sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. He says to the ghost, how say you, what care I? If thou canst nod, speak too. And Lady Macbeth says, quite unmanned in folly. But the ghost has eased out, and Macbeth says, I saw him. She says, 5 for shame. And Macbeth says, blood has been shed ere now. He said, in the old days, if you killed someone, they stayed dead. But now they come back and push us from our stools. This is more strange than such a murder is. Lady Macbeth sees he's calming down, and she says, your friends do like you. I do forget. And then he explains to them, I have a strange infirmity, and it's not unusual to those who know me. Well, they were probably thinking, we've known you most of your life, and we've never seen this. Possibly there would be some kind of, fit, epilepsy, that kind of thing. But then he's ready to make a big toast. I drink to the general joy of the whole table, and to our dear friend Banquo, whom he miss. Would he were here. To all and him we thirst, and all to all. And they all stand up and give a toast. Our duties and the pledge. They raise their drinking cups, and Banquo is there. Macbeth says, go away, you go away. And Lady Macbeth says, think of this, good peers, as a thing of custom, only it does mess up a feast. And Macbeth says to the ghost, I would be willing to fight all kinds of weird, crazy things, but you really get to me. The ghost exits. Why, so I'm being gone, I'm a man again. Lady Macbeth tells him, you have displaced the mirth, broke the good meeting with most admired disorder. In your life, you may at some time be invited to a dinner or a party, and when you get there, you realize that the host and hostess have had a really big fight before you came, and the air is thick with animosity, and you have to act like you don't notice. I've been in that situation. And Macbeth says, can such things be and overcome us like a summer's cloud without our special wonder? And then he said, I wonder about you. You make me strange even to the disposition that I own. when now I think you can behold such sights. Why isn't it scaring the heck out of you? What sights, my lord? He says, I pray you to the ghost, speak not. He grows worse and worse. No. Backtrack. I pray you, speak not. He grows worse and worse. And then she tells him, at once good night. Don't worry about the order of your going. Go at once. And they start off. And then they're gone. And Lady Macbeth, a kind good night to all. Macbeth says, it will have blood, they say. Blood will have blood. Stones have been known to move and trees to speak. Augurs and understood relations have by magpies and choughs and rooks brought forth the secretest man of blood. In other words, murder will out. What is the night? What time is it? She says, almost at odds with morning, which is which. And then he changes gears again. I mean, this guy on a dime. He says, why wasn't Macduff here? Lady Macbeth said, did you send to him? Macbeth says, no, I hear it by the way, but I will send. And he's, we see his paranoia here. I have a spy in the house of all those lords. And tomorrow I'm going to go to the weird sisters. More shall they speak. For now I am bent to know by the worst means the worst. For my own, and he's ridiculous in thinking that he's going to make the powers of evil tell him anything they're not prepared to tell him. And then, for mine own good, all causes shall give way. I don't care what I do, what I'm up to. And wonderful line here. I am in blood stepped in so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er. Like if you're crossing a big pond and you think, oh, this is really tedious getting through this pond. Well, you might as well finish because you're halfway to the other side. Strange things I have in head that will to hand. I'm making plans for strange things which must be acted ere they may be scanned. He wants to do more bloody deeds, but he doesn't want to think about it. And she says to him, come, we'll to sleep. My strange and self-abuse. Oh, she tells him, you lack the season of all nature's sleep. In other words, what makes us whole, makes us human, what seasons us as people is sleep. He says, okay, we'll go to sleep. My strange and self-abuse is the initiate fear that wants hard use. We are yet but young indeed. That seems like a very short speech, but it's kind of horrible. He says, the reason we have these repercussions, these bad dreams, this fear, and so on, is because we haven't really hardened ourselves to doing evil. But we'll get seasoned to that in time. Then we have a witch scene, which we're not going to bother with. And then finally, scene 6, Lennox and another lord are talking. And this kind of sums up the situation at the point. Lennox says, and it's a very sarcastic speech. He said, isn't it wonderful how Macbeth has held up so well under all the horrors that have been going on? Things have been strangely born. The gracious Duncan was pitied of Macbeth. Marry, he was dead. And Banquo walked too late. And what happened? His son killed him. Well, men must not walk too late. We cannot want the thought how monstrous it was from. And what about Malcolm and Donalbain? They killed their father, and that grieved Macbeth. And Macbeth killed the guys who killed Duncan, and wasn't that well done? He has borne all things well. And I do think if he had Duncan's sons under lock and key, they might find out the result of killing their father. And he says Macduff is in disgrace because he didn't go to the monster's feast. But then the Lord tells him, the son of Duncan lives in the English court. Malcolm is at the court of King Edward the Confessor, whom you should remember from first semester. Do you remember he wouldn't name a successor? And so when Harold went to be king, William the Conqueror came over and said, well, I live in Normandy and I own Normandy, but the king said I should be king. And then at the Battle of Hastings, 1066, he defeated Harold and took the throne. And Macduff has gone to pray at Holy Island, and he wants to round up other lords and maybe Seward, the Norwegian guy, to try to change things, so that we may again give to our tables meat, sleep to our nights, free from our feasts and banquets bloody knives, that we may do faithful homage and receive free honors, all which we pine for now. And the king has heard of this. Don't forget, he has spies in everybody's house, and he is so annoyed he prepares for some attempt at war. Lennox said, "Did he send to Macduff?" And he said, "Well, yes, when he sent for Macduff to come, Macduff simply said, 'Sir, not I.'" And the messenger pretty much let Macduff know that he'd be sorry for that. And last speech there, Lennox says, well, he needs to be careful. And let's hope that things work out with England so we can change all of this. I'd just like to say that I've been trying to do this very quickly because my laptop is about to go on the fritz, and I have to get it over to St. Bernard to Mr. Lauder before he goes home. I apologize for the mistakes I made in going through this act, but please be sure to go through it and see it in the movie if you can. There's lots of action in Macbeth, both internally and externally, but in some ways you can get a lot out of the ghost scene about, and again, is Macbeth really seeing a ghost? Well, I think he is. This is a time when ghosts were not that uncommon. So do the best you can, and Monday I will be back with the next act, Act 4, and then Tuesday, Act 5. I hope you've checked your messages from me and the new syllabus. I would also like to remind you that we had a note from Father Linus today, and he's kind of anxious because some students have not been turning in their work, and you'd hate to see people go under because of the coronavirus thing. I would say that none of you are in that boat, and I certainly hope not. But as a teacher, I really would like you to get as much as possible out of these days, as difficult as they are. And I am anxious for you to do well. In college, you may have an opportunity to use these plays, the ones we've had, Oedipus and Macbeth, and as we take a dollhouse. Not that you would use the whole play and everything, but you can use things for examples and so on. Okay, well, this is the first time I've been off campus in weeks, and it's kind of strange. I wish I were going the other way. I could get a hamburger or something. All right, take care, and I will be making another video for you to watch on Monday. I'll send you an email about this, okay? Because I was going to say, if you haven't watched the materials so far and read it, weekend is a good time. But you are watching, possibly, and weekend will be a good time to watch the movie. Okay, bye.